Significance of the Three Epics, January 26th, 2019. Swami replied, overcoming the 6 vices in the journey. Dushpravritti is the result of the attachment to illegitimate sex, kama, illegitimate anger, krodha, and illegitimate greed, lobha. The three are said to be the 3 main gates to hell in the Gita. Naturally, pravritti means rejecting the above 3 vices and adopting the opposite good qualities, which are legitimate sex, legitimate anger, and legitimate greed. Over-attachment or moha to illegitimate bonds leads to dushpravritti, while a limited attachment to the legitimate bonds leads to pravritti. Excessive attachment to even the legitimate bonds is a danger because it provokes the soul to commit sins. The attachment to legitimate bonds can be reduced by developing attachment to God. The attachment to the illegitimate worldly bonds can be completely eliminated with a combination of the fear of hell and the faith in God. Faith in God, the fear of hell, and the development of devotion to God together completely reform the soul. The soul then rises from the first stage of dushpravritti through the middle stage of pravritti all the way to the third stage of nivritti. The last 3 vices are illegitimate attachment, which is moha, ego, which is mada, and jealousy, which is matsarya. They automatically get associated with the first 3 vices, which are illegitimate lust, anger, and greed. Moha is the over-attachment to worldly bonds, but the worldly bonds are related to lust and greed. So the over-attachment is related to lust and greed. Similarly, one develops pride or ego due to materialistic achievements, which are related to greed. One also develops jealousy, matsarya, towards fellow human beings based on their worldly achievements. So the last 3 vices are based on the first 3 vices. Therefore, only the first 3 are stressed in the Gita as the 3 main gates to hell. In the Ramayanam, the illegitimate lust of Ravana is condemned, while the legitimate desire of Rama for his wife is appreciated. Ravana also had illegitimate anger towards Rama, even though the entire fault lay with Ravana's sister Shurpanakha. Shurpanakha had illegitimate lust for Rama, even though he was already married to Sita. When rejected by Rama, she tried to kill Sita and hence was injured by Lakshmana. The anger of Ravana at his sister's insult and injury was thus illegitimate. Ravana was very greedy and had even robbed the wealth of the angels. On the other hand, Rama had even refused to claim his rightful kingdom for the sake of the word given by his father. Even though Rama was actually an incarnation of God, he is considered to be only an ideal human being. The very purpose of his incarnation was to become an example of how a human being should ideally live in pravritti. So he strictly lived within the boundaries of worldly justice without showing any miracles. Ravana had a fascination for beautiful ladies, so he had moha. He was extremely proud of his materialistic achievements, so he had mada. He was also jealous of Rama, so he had matsarya. These 3 vices in Ravana are condemned in the Ramayana. On the other hand, Rama never had excessive attachment to his own wife Sita. In fact, when forced by circumstances, he even left her to fulfill his duty as an ideal king. Rama was an incarnation of God, yet he never showed ego. Even though the sages praised him as God, he replied that he was just a human being named Rama, the son of Dasharatha. Rama was never jealous of Ravana, who ruled the golden city of Lanka. Rama rejected illegitimate lust even though Shurpanakha, who had assumed the form of a very beautiful lady, was forcing herself upon him. Throughout his life, he remained loyal to Sita and did not marry again even after leaving Sita. Rama was also against illegitimate anger. All his life he remained patient and calm. He only expressed legitimate anger, and that too on very few occasions, such as to condemn sage Jabali and Vali for their unjust arguments. Rama was never greedy. He unhesitatingly left his rightful claim over the kingdom to keep his father's promise. Rama was the embodiment of all good qualities without even a trace of a single bad quality. Ravana was an embodiment of all the bad qualities without a trace of any good quality. The results of the Dushpravritti of Ravana and the Pravritti of Rama were clearly shown to both on earth during their very lifetimes. In both the Ramayanam and the Mahabharatam, terrible wars took place. The wars are violence, which is the practical form of anger. The anger of Ravana and Duryodhana was unjust, and hence they both were destroyed. The anger of Rama and Dharmaraja was justified, and hence both won the respective wars. The Ramayanam stands mainly for condemning the illegitimate lust of Ravana, and the Mahabharatam stands mainly for condemning the illegitimate greed of Duryodhana. Rama refused illegal sex by rejecting Shurpanakha and by advising Ravana to return Sita on the first day of the war after he defeated Ravana. Dharmaraja avoided illegitimate greed. He took every possible effort to resist going to war with Duryodhana in order to take back his rightful share of the kingdom, which Duryodhana had cunningly taken from him. Dharmaraja finally even begged to be given just 5 villages in place of his rightful share of half the kingdom. He finally fought the war only when all his requests were denied by Duryodhana. Duryodhana tried to undress Draupadi and ordered her to sit on his lap. It shows his desire for illegitimate sex. Duryodhana was over-attached to wealth in the form of the kingdom. He even tricked Dharmaraja and took over Dharmaraja's rightful share of the kingdom. Dharmaraja, however, never aspired for the share of Duryodhana. Duryodhana had a huge ego. He brutally insulted his own brothers and treated them like slaves after cunningly defeating them in an unfair game. Dharmaraja never had an ego. Even after being cheated, insulted, and abused by Duryodhana, Dharmaraja freed Duryodhana when the latter was captured by a Gandharva or an angel. Dharmaraja never spoke a single word of insult to Duryodhana after freeing him. Duryodhana was jealous of the wealth and fame of Dharmaraja, whereas Dharmaraja was never jealous of Duryodhana. Thus both the Ramayanam and the Mahabharatam are related to the first part of the journey from Dushpravritti to Pravritti. They preach to a person to reject injustice and follow justice. The Bhagavatam shows the second part of the journey from Pravritti to Nivritti. In this part, the devotee must overcome not only all illegitimate worldly bonds, but also all legitimate worldly bonds for the sake of God. In other words, the devotee's devotion must exceed the desire for anything and everything in this world. Prahlada rejected the legitimate bond with his father for the sake of God. He regarded God to be above even all legitimate bonds. The Gopikas showed the climax point of Nivritti by rejecting all worldly bonds for the sake of God. Among the worldly bonds, the 3 strongest bonds called Eshanas are the bond with wealth, the bond with one's child, and the bond with one's life partner. Krishna, the incarnation of God, tested the Gopikas for their ability to overcome all these 3 bonds in their love for him. He stole their butter, which was the wealth of the cowherd ladies. He observed who among the Gopikas was pleased with his stealing and eating of their butter, and who was annoyed about it. Those who loved him more than their wealth were pleased with his stealing. Some even willingly fed him. Also, the precious butter was meant for the children of the Gopikas. So stealing it from them tested not only whether their bond with Krishna was stronger than their bond with wealth, but also whether it was stronger than their bond with their children. Later, by asking the married Gopikas to dance with him on the banks of the Yamuna at midnight, he tested whether their bond with him was stronger than the bond with their husbands.